Welcome to the family here on Purple Mafia. I am your host, Paladino Joey, or Joey Wygen. Purple Mafia is available on all of your favorite podcasting apps, and I thank each and every one of you once and always for downloading and listening to the show. It is a great pleasure to be back on board with you once again today, as we will now do our annual Minnesota Vikings free agency special. Well, the Minnesota Vikings' future at quarterback is, set for a year at least, and we'll see how that goes. It's going to be Kyler Murray, so we'll talk about that. That's kind of like the feature presentation of the show. We'll kind of talk about the general signings as well and other thoughts. The Max Crosby, we'll just bring up that right now. The Max Crosby trade was nixed by the Ravens, so interesting there. That was a lot of people not real happy about that, and they wind up getting Hendrickson in the free agency later on. So the Ravens end up saving those draft picks they were going to give up for Max Crosby. The trade happened basically as the podcast was ending, like the same day for State of the Vikings. So just kind of funny. So Crosby's back with the Raiders for now. We'll see where he winds up at some point, unless I'm crazy here. Well, the free agent acquisitions, bringing guys back. The Kyler Murray fit, the decisions on what's going to happen with J.J. McCarthy, and my overall thoughts on J.J. McCarthy going forward. So we'll start off right away, just kind of jump right into things quickly here. Should be a two-segment show, this one and fan interaction. Probably look at the draft a tiny bit at the end of this segment again, and then the next episode will be the draft preview. And the show after that will be the draft review. And we might get a summer show or two after that, because I won't be doing lawn service full-time anymore, so that's a good thing, generally speaking. But yeah, not full-time, but I'll probably be doing some part-time to help out, but generally speaking, so maybe an extra Purple Mafia or so in the summertime. We'll see how that goes. And, news or just general conversation. I was going to try the video thing last year. I'll probably get back to that again, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't know if I'm not good at it. Some people like it, but it didn't really catch on hardly at all, but we'll see. Maybe it just still needs a little love. Anyhow, Andrew DePaula, long snapper, coming back at 38 years of age, a one-year deal worth $1.725. So Andrew DePaula returning, so that's good. One of the best long snappers in the NFL. He's 38 years of age, but a lot of these guys kind of hang on for many years at times. Long snappers, punters, and kickers. The Vikings lost Ryan Wright. The Vikings lost Ryan Wright, 4-year contract with the Saints for a decent amount of money. Kind of surprising for a number of us, like, wow, Ryan Wright's gone. And, well, we had a wonderful year. It's just kind of sad to see him go, to be quite honest. I wasn't all that happy about that, to see Ryan Wright go. But it is what it is. Four-year deal for him with the Saints. Kind of is what it is, right? It's a good gig if you can get it, over $3 million a year with the Saints for the punter. So, Ryan Wright, congratulations. I mean, it is what it is. It's sad to see him go. Obviously, love what he can do. But, the Vikings got a new punter, Johnny Hekker. Brent Jacobson locally joked about Denny Hekker. No, Johnny Hekker coming to the Minnesota Vikings, a former Los Angeles Ram coming to the Minnesota Vikings. Decent punter. Decent. We'll look at his numbers a little bit here, if humanly possible. Small contract for the most part. It's just a one-year deal. So he was a Titan, actually. Pardon me. I'm thinking about the Rams. I don't know why. But, I do believe he did play there as well. Of course he did. Yeah, he played for the Rams and played for the Titans last season. They're now taking on the Houston Oilers look. So I actually really like that. Unfortunately, he had 7 touchbacks last year, which is a career high. That's obviously when you basically miss. Ryan Wright, there were some seasons where it would be a miracle if he even had a single touchback. Ryan Wright was so good about that, keeping the ball in. Hekker is pretty good about keeping the ball in the 20, though, and then even in the 10 on occasion, but he didn't last year at all. He had nothing in the 10, unless they're not recording that as they used to. But, who knows? Stats are stats, right? Averaged 46.8 yards a punt, and with Tennessee, probably have to be averaging pretty high numbers because they're not getting anywhere. Career high of 48.5 with the Carolina Rams, the Carolina Panthers in 2022. He actually didn't play for the Rams until since 2021, but that does mean he has a Super Bowl ring. This Johnny Hekker playing all 17 games there, and you look at his career record about being active out there. keep it up. That's all I got to say. I don't want to jinx him. It's really impressive, actually, his attendance. Let's just say his attendance record as a punter has been phenomenal. So, awesome. Ryan Kelly has announced his retirement March the 6th. That was a bit ago. Retired. Don't know if I officially talked about that on the last episode. Ryan Kelly has announced his retirement. Kind of the right thing to do. And, yes, obviously it's for his health and such. And, I mean, that's enough of the injuries and such over the course of time. Carson Wentz was actually activated, from the injured reserve and all that. But, yep, well, we'll talk about Carson Wentz in a little bit. I'm going to save that for later. The Vikings released Aaron Jones kind of to free up some cap space and then brought him back. Okay, the Vikings brought Aaron Jones back for a cheaper deal, so that's nice, generally speaking. Aaron Jones returning to the Minnesota Vikings, if I ever get there. His cap hit still seems awfully high. Dead cap of 500. His signing bonus is 800,000. His base salary is $5 million. Interesting. His dead cap is still at $5 million, but again, definitely cheaper than it was before. His cap hit this year is 10. So I don't know if I'm looking at this correctly. Is that really accurate? It's still that high? I can't be right. But yeah, that's surprising to me, actually. Yeah, it is 5.6. So I'm like, it's like, it's interesting. But again, it's cheaper than it was before. So yes, it went from 9 to 5.5. So that's kind of the main thing there. Saving, I don't know, like $4.5 million or so, $3.5 million. Basically $3.5 million. That's all it really was. But it's something, it's something. You're saving bits and pieces here and there. Mr. Hawkinson restructured as well. So happy to have Hawkinson back, I suppose. I mean, he wanted to be here. He wanted to be here. So that's kind of how that goes. The restructure there. The restructuring will reduce the number. It was a cap hit of 21.3. The restructuring will reduce that number and free up roughly $5 million in cap space. So you add that together. There you go, 8.5 just with those two players of cap space. That's something. It's definitely something. So you clear up $5 million cap and kick the can down the road, as they say. Unfortunately, so T.J. Hawkinson, of course, doing the restructuring. He is at going from 21 to 15.6 in the cap hit. So it is what it is. At the end of the day, Brian O'Neill is crazy when you look at his cap hit of 23.1 million. His dead cap is only 3.7, which is really interesting at the end of the day. So if the Vikings were to move on from him at some point, but they're not going to do that right now. And why would you? You don't really have a plan to do that. So that could be a terrible mistake at the end of the day if the Vikings head in that direction. I think there's no real rush to do that. Johnny Hekker, yes, again, very small contract at the end of the day. Bringing him back, but happy to bringing him in the fold is more like it. So, yeah. Andrew DePaula, like we said, 1.47 at the end of the day. Yes, sir. We'll get to the main players here in a second, but kind of gotta kind of go through the group here a bit. Kind of go through the weeds here a little bit as well. I'm just kidding. Carson Wentz was brought back on a 1-year deal, of course. That's what that means. We'll get to that in a little bit. I'm jumping ahead here. This thing is not in the order I would have liked it in. Taveri Thomas, who's more of kind of a special teams guy, sticking in Minnesota. He's a defensive back. $4.6 million, 2 year, $4.6 million. So, again, one of those gunner guys who's actually really good on special teams and can be a factor. Maybe, obviously, he can get in the lineup as well. But he's definitely a help to the special teams. He's, losing him would be a loss for sure. James Pierre, a depth addition from the Pittsburgh Steelers, coming to the Minnesota Vikings, 2 years, $8.5 million. So at bare minimum, he's a depth piece. 29 years of age, coming from the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's definitely had some moments at times with the Pittsburgh Steelers. 29 years of age, like I've been saying, but obviously he's not like a star necessarily, but a guy who could be your third or fourth cornerback and can definitely help this team in a lot of ways. I hope I haven't been saying Pierre Thomas. It's James Pierre. For some reason, I have a feeling I've been saying Pierre Thomas. It's James Pierre. There was a Pierre Thomas, years ago as a running back. Not that old, but he's definitely older. He's like 40. So, yes, the 2 years, 8.5, like I just said. Oh, boy. Definitely has had his moments and will definitely help the depth of this team, generally speaking, going forward. Would like to look at what he's done over his career at times. Getting kind of the delays here, and I apologize for that. Yes, he spent his whole career with the Pittsburgh Steelers thus far. Yep, 90, born in 96. He's going to turn 30 right around the start of the season. Coming from Florida Atlantic. Yes, that's very exciting, I know. He's forced 5 career fumbles. 3 of them were in 2021 and 2 of them were in 2024. Interceptions, he's had only 4. He's had 4 throughout his career. 1 in 21, 1 in 22, 1 in 24, and 1 in 25. So not a huge ball hawk, but again, definitely a guy who can provide depth for this team. And nothing's gonna, there's really no loss in adding a depth player here. This is not a, necessarily a franchise-changing move or anything, but it's definitely a help and a depth addition to a, defensive back core that have been pretty frustrating, to say the least. Very excited to have Eric Wilson back in the fold. I called him the MVP of the team last year. That's how good he was. A 3-year deal, 22.5 for him. Eric Wilson obviously deserves to come back, and he played wonderful, fits in really nicely with Brian Flores. Pretty much in a lot of ways cost Ivan Pace a lot of snaps when he came in with how well he played. So really impressed, and hopefully that Eric Wilson continues to do what he's been doing. And that's crucial. It's a veteran linebacker core here, 32 years of age in Mr. Eric Wilson's case. But again, big fan of him. He did a hell of a job last year, getting about 7 sacks. So, and not just the sacks, but the overall strong play as a linebacker was impressive and extremely valuable. Yeah. So really appreciate what he was able to accomplish. The headliner is Kyler Murray. Yep, Kyler Murray, $1.3 million, coming to the Minnesota Vikings. Am I excited about it? I don't know. A lot of people look at it as, at a $1.3 million deal, anybody would do that for a guy with the talent level of a Kyler Murray. I get it. Believe me, I get it. But at the same time, do I look at Kyler Murray like he's going to take us to a Super Bowl? I don't know. I've seen no evidence that he's capable of doing that. Obviously, his first 8 years were with the Arizona Cardinals. Only played 5 games last year. The previous season, he did play all 17. He was actually on my fantasy team. And remember my reaction to seeing Kyler Murray, because I often just let the computer do it, and then I come back and, it's like an auto draft, and I come and then do everything else after that. Like the whole league does auto draft. We just kind of let it do a random thing, see who we get, and then go from there. Maybe do a couple of projections here and there as well, like hoping to get, you maybe you move some player up or whatever to hope you at least get this guy or that guy. To move them up in the rankings, so to speak, if you think they're underrated and you can sneak them in. Well, when I saw Kyler Murray as my starter to open up the 24th season, returning to fantasy football in basically a decade hiatus, I wasn't all that excited. And he was okay. He had some good moments, but I ended up benching him during the course of the season. So that's kind of my thought. That's kind of how I look at Kyler Murray, at least from a fantasy perspective. Overall perspective, yes, he's talented. The short jokes are getting really old. Like, okay, yeah, oh yeah, it's so cute. Yes, he's just so short, and he's Kevin Hart as a quarterback. Come on, people, it's not that funny. It was funny for a couple minutes, okay, maybe an hour or two, and then it's like, can you stop? It's really not that funny anymore. So yes, I don't like the short jokes anymore. It's not that. It's about, can the guy play? That's what matters. He kind of can, but I don't know. I think Arizona probably just the raw talent alone. We're excited about taking him number 1 overall back in the 2019 season, 2019 draft. But is he a guy that probably should have gone number 1 overall? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, it's the Arizona Cardinals, and I guess he was projected to go number 1, so I guess he's number 1, and that's kind of how you look at it. His career high in touchdowns, 26, and that was in his second year in 2020 when nobody was in the building. There were no stadiums. One stat that I'm appreciating, and I hope it's correct, and I'm looking at it clearly here. Somehow I don't believe it. It seems too good to be true. Because nobody's talking about it. That's why I think it's too good to be true. 0 fumbles. You hear what I'm doing? I'm knocking on wood. That can't be right, can it? He's never... Okay, yeah, BS. You switch over to the rushing side. Oh, he's fumbled. He had 8 fumbles in 2024 alone. 4 of them were lost, so at least he didn't lose them all. He had 7 in 2023. He didn't lose a single fumble in 2023, even though he did fumble the ball, but he didn't lose the fumble. They didn't get the possession wasn't given over to the other team. It wasn't officially a turnover. 8 fumbles in 2022 with 2 lost. But like his first 3 years in the league, 0 fumbles of any kind. That's pretty good. He actually ran for 11 touchdowns as well. I remember thinking very highly of him in 2020. Like, oh yeah, this kid's a stud. Back in 2020, like, man, he can really move. And I do believe he torched us, didn't he? In one of those games, didn't he like kick our butts? It might have been 2020 when everything was everything was kind of going downhill after that nice positive 2019 season. You just knew that was like just like a short-lived little thing. Like, yay, we won a playoff game, only to get demolished by a 49er team that also did not win the Super Bowl. They came damn close, but they didn't. By the way, they did not win that Super Bowl. They just weren't as good as the stupid Chiefs. I wasn't happy about that at all, by the way. But Kyler Murray in 2020 was awesome. There's no doubt. In 2021, he was even better as an overall passer with that 26 and 12 numbers. But do those numbers jump out you and you're like, oh my God, 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Oh my God, wow. Yeah, so that was 2020. So it was kind of stats there. In 2021, his general quarterbacking numbers were, overall better, I suppose. Yes, so I'm getting it mixed up with 2020 and 21. The 24 and 10 deal, 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 7.9 yards per attempt. That's not too bad. 37-87 in yards. 37-87, does that really jump out at you like, holy crap? It really doesn't to me. 69.2, that's a nice completion percentage. The completion percentage overall, 67.1. That's pretty good, generally speaking. You see some guys, they're down like around 50-ish, 55. That's garbage. You don't want that. But overall, Kyler Murray does not jump out at me as somebody that like, oh my God, it's franchise-changing type of thing. And he had some talented receivers in Arizona. And even Larry Fitzgerald was still there at the end, wasn't he? He was still like around the end of his career, but he could still play. He was just old, so I don't know. I get it, the whole no-brainer thing, 1.3. Chances are he's just going to leave anyway, like Carlos Correa, right? Carlos Correa is just going to leave. Yeah, he signed 2 different contracts with 2 different teams who ultimately ended up changing their mind and said no because he would like fail the physical or whatever, him being Carlos Correa. And, now he'll come to the Twins, and then it's like within a year or two, it's like he was more of a liability than a help, particularly like he cost too much and all that. Could you imagine the Vikings getting trapped into some kind of Kirk Cousins type deal with Kyler Murray? That's kind of what I'm afraid of here. Like, oh my God, we let Sam Darnold go. You saw what happened. Look what Sam Darnold did the next year. Yeah, with the best defense in the world, and like one of the best running backs in the league too. Yeah, and I have a huge rant about that. I'll just get to it right now. I'll not rant too much. It just sucks. Yeah, he's the Super Bowl MVP, Kenneth Walker III signed with the frickin' Chiefs. Oh, God. Why? Anything but that. I mean, the only team, most people would be like, oh, no, don't go there. It'd be like Green Bay. That's about it. Or Dallas or something. We're all sick of the Packers and the Cowboys around here. But I'm as sick as the Chiefs as I'm sick of the Cowboys and Packers, let me tell you. Why the Chiefs? Hopefully it won't matter and the Chiefs are just junk. Oh, and Travis Kelce's going to come back. Oh, that's wonderful. Or at least supposedly he's coming back. It's not official or anything, but he's probably going to. How exciting. Yay. Travis Kelce, know your role and shut your mouth. No, at least last year he seemed to be slightly more humble as the year progressed. And how could you not be humbled when you're like, I don't know, dropping the ball and slow compared to what you used to be? It's about time he slowed down, isn't it? Yes, he was a hell of a player, but it's annoying. He liked himself a little too much for my liking. Anyone else? A little too happy with himself. Like, come on, dude. Too proud. Too proud is not cool. It's not. Anyhow, Kyler Murray, starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings in 2026. Yeah, okay. We'll see what happens. There's talent there. Not really sure what to say overall. Am I jumping for joy? Not really. Am I intrigued? Sure. I mean, he's a talented player. He's extremely happy to be here, so I like that. I appreciate that. Apparently, he's been a lifelong Viking fan, which caught me by surprise a bit, that he actually cried real tears as a young man when the Brett Favre across the body throw ended up being like the dagger for the Vikings' chances of going to the Super Bowl. Now, it wasn't officially the dagger, but you just knew all the momentum was going to be on the Saints' side. And what happened just a few plays later was we went into overtime. The Saints were able to get down the field enough, and the field goal was made, and we never saw the ball again. And the Saints ended up beating the Colts pretty good in that Super Bowl, which makes you all wonder, would the Vikings have beaten the Colts? I think there's a pretty good possibility the Vikings would have, even though, unfortunately, the one thing I keep coming back to, the Minnesota Vikings never, ever beat Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. So would the Vikings have beaten Peyton Manning in that Super Bowl? I would like to believe they would have, but we'll never know, unfortunately. It's not we may never know, we will never know. Not unless the whole planet can go back in time and we get another crack at it. The Saints get nailed for what they did, and yeah, sorry, you're disqualified. The Vikings are going to the Super Bowl. You know, you're disqualified for all that crap you pulled. And Brett Favre magically does not have an injured ankle during the course of that game, and leading into the next week or 2 weeks with potential major stiffness and bruising. All that dissolves, and Brett Favre is ready to go against Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl. Who knows? Maybe the Vikings would have won. Because, Brett Favre wasn't the quarterback in all those other games that we lost to Peyton Manning, including years later when we lost to Peyton Manning as a Denver Bronco, much to our chagrin. And, you know, a Broncos team that clearly could play better than we thought, despite Peyton Manning hitting a physical wall and getting to be too old basically at the end there. That defense was just so darn good, and that team was ready to win, and they did. So credit to that Broncos team years later. And Peyton Manning's final season. I remember the Vikings losing that year with Teddy Bridgewater to that Broncos team in a very close game. Frustrating, but it is what it is. That's a nervous chuckle if you hadn't figured that out. Kyler Murray's last full season as a quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals, or an NFL quarterback, full season. 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions in 17 games. Does that excite you that much? I don't know, not much. It doesn't excite me a whole lot. Running numbers, well, he had 572 yards on the ground and 5 touchdowns. That's pretty good. He had a 50-yard long during the course of that year. Last year, Kyler Murray only played 5 games, 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and ran the ball in once. 173 yards rushing in only 5 games. It's actually not too bad. But, man, that one year, 819. Yeah, I remember he was running all over the Vikings in one of those games. Definitely a talented son of a gun. But, I don't know, can he focus? Can he be that leader? We'll see. But, yes, he was very excited to be a member of the Minnesota Vikings. He is a lifelong Minnesota Vikings fan, which can surprise me a little bit. But cool. That's great to know. J.J. McCarthy must have been a Bears fan. In fact, everybody on the planet probably is pretty sure that he was a Bears fan. Growing up, I think he admitted it, didn't he? Carson Wentz, lifelong Minnesota Vikings fan. Carson Wentz re-signs with the Minnesota Vikings. So Carson Wentz is back with a one-year dilly, whatever you want to call it. How much is it going to be? It looks like, unless this is incorrect, $3 million. So 34, and the dead cap is about $1.1 million. So not expensive at all. 34 years of age, Carson Wentz. We saw what he did out there. Some people, supposedly there are people in the organization that believe the Minnesota Vikings would make the playoffs if they left Carson Wentz in. You see the game? You know what I mean? I like Carson Wentz. He's a backup quarterback at this stage of his career. He's not Philadelphia Eagles pre-knee injury Carson Wentz. He's not. And even, afterwards as well, where he had some decent moments with the Colts and the Philadelphia Eagles, his last few years there, where he showed promise, and then all of a sudden it seemed like it's just, maybe this guy's just a backup. Just a good backup. And that's kind of what he is. He's a solid backup quarterback. 34 years of age already. Man, time flies. Because you remember him as this young number 2 overall pick going to the Eagles, and looked beyond promising with that team. Like, there's a pretty good chance the Eagles team would have won the Super Bowl with Carson Wentz as the quarterback. I don't think it was all just Nick Foles, 1,000% Nick Foles and his magical run. They could have won with Carson Wentz because they were winning with Carson Wentz. So, and he looked damn good doing it that year. And then he had the freaking ACL. So, quite unfortunate for him. And it wasn't quite the same after that, even though he did have a couple of good years with Philly after that. Carson Wentz, of course. But what does this all mean for J.J. McCarthy? That's the million-dollar question. Some people think that, okay, well, Wentz is kind of like the emergency starter in a situation. but that McCarthy is generally the number 2 guy. But like Wentz is more like the emergency starter, like you know, like situations. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain where like potentially like he would kind of be the emergency quarterback, but then Wentz is still, or excuse me, JJ McCarthy is still looked at as the number 2. And like say if what's his name just isn't working out, then you can go back to McCarthy potentially, especially if he's showing promise in practice and such. But that Wentz would remain the backup no matter what, one way or other. Like he just kind of is the backup at the end of the day. So, yeah. But that's how I would like to look at it, that they haven't given up on J.J. McCarthy. Other people believe this is a sign that the team has already, the organization has already given up on J.J. McCarthy. Wentz is the backup, and you have a 1 year, all the eggs in basket with, it's just $1.3 million. But then if, what's his name, Kyler Murray ends up getting ends up going somewhere else, then who's your quarterback? Carson Wentz, and then hope to draft somebody? I mean, I don't know. Hope to get somebody in the draft the next year? I guess. 2027 is a better draft potentially, so people are looking forward to that as a possibility. Like maybe you're going to cut bait right now and move on when it comes to J.J. McCarthy. My thoughts on the whole situation with J.J. McCarthy here, I'm telling you, I still have a feeling about the kid. I still have a feeling about the kid. Like, I get it. You're disappointed last year with what he was doing out there. He was kind of a mess. I don't think he's Christian Ponder. I really don't. I don't think he's Christian Ponder where he always magically would come up short going for a first down, or, he just didn't have the arm strength or this or that. He was always just kind of not good enough to do this and not good enough to do that. And that's pretty much what continued to happen with Christian Ponder, that even at his best, no matter how competitive it is, no matter how competitive the fire in his belly was, he just simply wasn't good enough. He didn't have the special skills, did Christian Ponder, to be a starting quarterback in the league, and maybe not even a decent backup. There's something to J.J. McCarthy where he is able to get over the hump in situations. There's something there. There's something there. Weirdest comparison ever with certain people. Now, I'm not even going to go to it because it'll weird you out, so I won't even go to it. If I do someday, hopefully, yeah, you won't think I'm crazy. But there is a possibility that certain players might not be spectacular players, but in the clutch, they come through, they pull through, and there's something. And then, but at the same time, at age 22 and 10 NFL games under his belt, that's it, just 10 NFL games. Now he's 23 or turning 23. J.J. McCarthy could still improve greatly. I can imagine the competitive fire in him is going to fuel him and make him better and better and better. And J.J. McCarthy, like it or not, played a lot better later in the season when the offense was more balanced, rather than just kind of like pass. There's something there. Like, you can only do so much with Kyler Murray, even though he's had some experience now in the league. What has Kyler Murray shown you that he's going to, carry this team to a Super Bowl? To me, absolutely nothing. Does he have special skills? Sure. But the results aren't there yet. The results aren't there, and he's 28. He's 28. You know what I mean? J.J. McCarthy's just going to be turning 23 here. I am not ready to give up on J.J. McCarthy. And if this franchise is ready to give up on J.J. McCarthy, they will regret it, because the day's coming that I think J.J. McCarthy emerges into a pretty special quarterback in this league. He might not go on to be Joe Burrow or anything super spectacular. He might not go on to be a top 5 quarterback in this league. But let me tell you, I think there's more to him than meets the eye. And I'm going to continue to say that. He had ugly games. Ugly, historically ugly games. But a lot of that started to go away. And at the same time, even in some of those ugly games, he would he would make up for it with clutch play late to put the team in position to win. It wasn't J.J. McCarthy's fault that the special teams gave up a late, large return to the Chicago Bears that ended up costing us the game. That was BS. J.J. McCarthy, despite awful numbers in that game, put this team in position to win that game, and which could have possibly led the Vikings to a postseason. So you wouldn't need Carson Wentz being healthy to take you to the postseason. Some people are saying members of the front office were saying behind the scenes, or even the coaching staff, about Carson Wentz, being the steadying force and taking this team to the playoffs. You're not winning the Super Bowl with Carson Wentz as your starter. That's impossible. Pretty much impossible. I'd be shocked. Maybe with the 85 Bears or something. Maybe. Especially if Peyton Manning, or was Peyton Manning, what was his name? Walter Payton. Peyton Manning. Especially if Walter Payton was a little bit younger. Yeah. Especially if Walter Payton was a little bit younger, because it was pretty far into his career by that point. Wasn't he he was in his mid-30s by 85, Walter Payton lasted a long time, like longer than the average running back. And he stuck with the same team, too, which is insanely rare. But, even O.J. Simpson played for, like, the 49ers and stuff. So, it's funny. Even O.J. Simpson, God rest his soul, but unfortunately, maybe shouldn't go to that name too often, one way or another. But I think this team will rue the day they gave up on J.J. McCarthy if they go on to do that. I think he's clutch. I think there's a gamesmanship to him. Was he silly and immature last year? Of course. But how old was he? He was 22. How many 22-year-olds are kind of crazy and immature? How many? Lots. Lots and lots and lots. So I'm not in a huge rush to move on from McCarthy just yet. Giving up on him will be a mistake, and I pray that this franchise isn't dumb enough to do that, because it would be heartbreaking. It would be. It would be terrible to find out the Vikings trade J.J. McCarthy for a third-round pick. Trade him to the New York Jets or something, or the Las Vegas Raiders for a third-round pick. I would just vomit. A third-round pick. Could you imagine if they did that? A third-round pick after the same guy led Michigan to a national championship. Now, was he the best player? Not necessarily, but he's still a big factor as to why that team won. He has leadership skills. He has them. Kyler Murray, I'm not so sure, but he does. J.J. McCarthy does have leadership skills. And he does have special skills on the football field as well. Quickness, throwing arm, and clutch ability in the big moments. He has that ability to turn it up when it matters most. Now, if he can be more consistent, that's a work in progress. But that doesn't mean you give up on the kid. I think, those are my thoughts on J.J. McCarthy, Carson Wentz, and Kyler Murray, the whole quarterback situation for the Minnesota Vikings going into 26 and beyond. Is it like a one-year thing for Kyler Murray, see how this goes? Maybe he's just crappy and then McCarthy takes over, so be it. I mean, there's even conversation that could happen, sure. I mean, that's just random sports conversation, KFAN, Score North, guys like that, and Purple Mafia here, and others possibly, I'm sure. But I'm kind of hoping that happens, honestly. I'm kind of hoping it winds up that way. Not trying to disrespect or crap on Kyler Murray necessarily, but I'm just not ready. I'm not ready. It's eating at me. It's really, how you have this gut feeling, and you're terrified of the team giving up on a kid, and you just have this it's just something's eating at you, pulling at you, and you just know it would be a terrible mistake if they do. That's kind of how I feel right now about the whole situation with J.J. McCarthy, if this franchise has truly moved on. If he goes out there next year, and in the time he's out there, and he's either the same or worse, kind of like Christian Ponder from 2012 to 2013, where clearly Christian Ponder had actually gotten worse, not better, after showing some promising signs in 2012, despite kind of being a mess at times as well. When Christian Ponder clearly was inferior to 2012, that's when it's like, yeah, okay, pull the plug, we can do better. And thankfully the Vikings did move on and took Teddy Bridgewater, and he ended up being pretty good until the stupid, devastating knee injury. So that was the most devastating knee injury. I mean, could you, I don't want to even imagine what it looked like when players were just, like throwing helmets and cursing like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. The poor kid. At the time, now he's in his early 30s, but, early 30s. Have that horrible, tragic injury. Terrible. Just the worst thing ever. Again, a nervous chuckle. I'm not laughing at the situation. But the history of this team at the quarterback position is like, it's just been an up and down roller coaster adventure for so many years. don't you just wish and pray to God that this team finds their guy, and he ends up being, you could say, the American Pharaoh. He ends up being the American Pharaoh for this franchise, the one that finally breaks through. You know, do you remember American Pharaoh in 2015 when we waited since like the late 70s for a horse to finally break through and win the Triple Crown, and American Pharaoh was finally the one. That was what the announcer said that day. American Pharaoh is finally the one. It was so beautiful. He was saying that as American Pharaoh was approaching approaching the finish line to win the Triple Crown. And I just want to believe that J.J. McCarthy could be that one, the one to finally end the drought for all this fan base that has been heartbroken for so many years. I want to believe that possibility still exists. I'm just pleading with the franchise here on Purple Mafia, here in late March, on the free agency special episode, that don't give up on J.J. McCarthy just yet, just after 10 games. After 10 games. If he comes out in the time because he probably will play at some point next year, no matter how you feel about Kyler Murray, no matter what there is, no matter what type of performance Kyler Murray brings, J.J. McCarthy is probably going to be on the field in a real regular season game at some point. And if he looks worse, like he's not gotten better, then so be it. So be it. But I got a feeling that ain't going to be the case when his back's been pushed against the wall here in this situation. You're going to see somebody, prove that he is a starter in this league. Perhaps this is some kind of 3D chess they're playing. I don't know. Wouldn't be the first time that that's happened. What happened with Drew Brees? Remember Drew Brees with the Chargers when he was basically kind of like pushed to the side? Or was in the process of being pushed to the side because they took Phillip Rivers. The San Diego Chargers took Phillip Rivers. Remember? Drew Brees was still there, and Drew Brees came out and was one of the best quarterbacks in the league after having a mass start to his career. He was mediocre. And then Drew Brees exploded and then signed as a free agent with the New Orleans Saints, and he went on to have a Hall of Fame career. So you never know. Stuff like that can wake you up. Drew Brees had a meh start to his career. Meh. He was looked on as a pretty promising guy, shorter guy too, but very promising player. Very promising quarterback, great college player for Purdue. Was meh at the beginning with the Chargers. Phillip Rivers was taken, and it's like, all right, I'll show you guys. I'm a starting quarterback, and he was an unbelievable player in his last year with the San Diego Chargers, and went on to have a Hall of Fame run with the Saints and won a Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens. I just hope that doesn't happen with McCarthy leaving and going to the Saints or something and winning a Super Bowl. Not the Saints, please, or really anybody else. Hopefully it happens here instead. Laugh all you want. Ha ha ha. I can hear you laughing. But maybe. Well, I got that across. That was something that has been eating at me for days and for days, and I couldn't wait to get behind the mic and talk about that. So, ooh boy, yep, I'm terrified a little bit about that possibility happening. But at the same time, it's exciting as well. If he goes out there and proves himself and becomes a legitimate starter in this league, Kyler Murray has a chance with whoever, Pittsburgh Steelers, whoever it is. Miami Dolphins, who knows? Of course, they made a decent signing as well with the the Packer quarterback there, the backup quarterback who ended up doing so well when Jordan Love was out. That guy would, of course, be Malik Willis. I mean, obviously, wonderful job for the Packers in the time Jordan Love was out. Did a great job, kept them afloat in a big way. We'll see what happens with him in Miami. Could be a nice addition. I was even thinking Kyler Murray there. The other one, Tua, wind up with the Atlanta Falcons. That's an interesting one. Of course, Michael Penix recovering from another ACL. Good Lord. Terrible. But so Tua, who's pretty injury prone and can't play in cold weather. Good luck with that. They are playing in a dome, and it's in a warm climate, so we'll see what happens there with Atlanta, a dome or an indoor stadium, whatever, in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, basically, in Atlanta. And, of course, Kirk Cousins will be released and all that. It has been. And we'll see where he winds up. Maybe the Steelers. So Steelers might go with the old quarterback again. Aaron Rodgers might end up signing somewhere. Remember, they waited until like June or whatever till he was finally signed somewhere. He had a solid year. Beat us, unfortunately. In Ireland, it was a pot of garbage. beat us in Ireland. That was disappointing, but it happened. It's exactly what happened. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens if Aaron Rodgers returns again to somebody, possibly the Steelers or whatever. Probably not as a backup, but I think he's getting old enough that he should strongly consider retiring, I think. He was okay, but then when the playoffs rolled around, it was like, it's just a waste of time. They're not even competitive. Obviously, Tomlin's long gone now, and he's not a head coach right now, so we'll see what happens with Mike Tomlin. Where's he going to wind up? Some people think he could end up being the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, that he's actually secretly the guy that we're bringing in to be the new GM. So wouldn't that be fascinating? That could be. But the cap management with Rob Brzezinski has been pretty cool and exciting. Is he a drafter? Who knows? But obviously he's the acting general manager. It's kind of weird to imagine that it's strange. It's strange. Like, is there secretly a guy in place that's been chosen, but they got to keep it a secret for now for whatever reason? I don't know. But it's strange. Like, you're making moves for the next guy for him to take the position. It's an odd situation. Otherwise, Brzezinski's already the choice, and they're just not making it official yet. I don't know. That wouldn't get me jumping out of my chair either if the Vikings decided that Brzezinski's the next general manager. Is he a great capologist? Of course. But is he the guy to lead the team in the draft and the capology? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens at the end of the day. With that, free agency's been fairly interesting for the most part. Kind of, sort of. It's definitely intriguing at the very least. Kyler Murray and Carson Wentz. And then McCarthy's still floating there as the number 2 or number 3. Even Max Brosmer's still like a number 4 guy. So some rosters even show that Mark Rypien's still here, which, no, is he? I don't think so. I don't know why it's still showing him in there. Unless he's in some kind of like a, what do you call it? Practice squad or something. John Wolford. I mean, well, he was here for a minute. Random off-season random signing at the end of the year because of the injury to Carson Wentz and such. So they had to get somebody as a third stringer in there or potential backup. So I don't know, especially when McCarthy got hurt. Yeah, again, that's the other thing with McCarthy. Can he frickin' stay healthy? Murray had trouble staying healthy. Can McCarthy stay healthy? So who's to say with what's going to happen with Wentz and such? So Wentz gets hurt a lot. He had that nasty shoulder injury that's just, I guess it's healthy and ready to go now. So good for him in a lot of ways. Now we're going to look towards the draft, I suppose, going forward for the Minnesota Vikings as a possible, could it be a running back or something? So who's to say? Who's to say at the end of the day here? NFL mock drafts and such. Yahoo one. This is like does it have a simulator? Clutch points. Yep, round 2. I don't like this. This is a mess. Who is this supposed to even be? So this is the Giants. We don't want that. Mel Kiper. Kiper. Yep, of course. Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza. Fernando Mania in Las Vegas. Minnesota Vikings here on Mel Kiper. Dylan Thieneman. That one seems to be the consensus of late, kind of like McCarthy was back in 2024. Dylan Thieneman. Could be that safety coming in because, yes, Harrison Smith is 37. He's either going to retire or play one last year. What the hell? But, yes, Thieneman does seem to be floating around a lot. He was in the last Mel Kiper, the most recent version of it. So, yep, apparently reminds Mel Kiper a lot of Harrison Smith. So, interesting. Could be an interesting pick here. 18th overall. Dylan Thieneman coming in out of Oregon. Oregon. Not Oregon. Oregon. Don't call it Oregon. It's Oregon. He had 5 pass deflections, 44 solo tackles, and 2 interceptions for he even looks like Harrison Smith a little bit, doesn't he? Yep. Number 31, at least in Oregon. Keep on losing bring in the Oregon Duck. Okay, sorry. That was naughty. As a freshman, Mr. Thieneman intercepted again and again, 6 times. He had 6 interceptions as a freshman in 23. In 24, no interceptions, unfortunately. But at 6 pass deflections instead. And in 25, 2 interceptions and 5 pass deflections. Only 2 pass deflections in the 6 interception season as a freshman. But overall, he's been wonderful. Been a full-time starter in Oregon throughout his career. He has 2 sacks, 1 last year and 1 2 years ago. him being Thieneman, of course. 2 forced fumbles as a freshman. Hasn't had any since, which is interesting, I guess. But really appreciate the effort by Thieneman with Oregon. And would I endorse it? Yes. 6 foot, not 6'5", 6 foot, 205 is Dylan Thieneman. So that's kind of been he's becoming more and more the consensus. You're kind of seeing him over and over and over again coming to the Vikings. Ty Simpson would be going to the Jets, possibly from Alabama. Okay, all right. Caden Proctor tackle to the Lions. I'm sure they could use help there after retirement happening again to them. C.J. Allen could be a nice addition to the Vikings, possibly at the linebacker position. Who knows? He'd be going to the Cowboys in some kind of trade to the Pack. Emmanuel McNeil Warren, as well as a safety, would go right after the Vikings to Carolina. So that's another possibility that could be floating around, coming to Minnesota at some point if maybe Thieneman ends up going. Let's go to Walter football. A lot of times these are off the wall, strange choices, but other times they can be pretty good. Major dislike about this page is the 100 bajillion ads. I get it. You're trying to get some kind of revenue to the page, but holy cow. And yes, 1 billion people go to Walter football. Everybody's heard of it for the most part. Finally was able to successfully close the ad, but where's the draft? See, now it's not showing it, which is really annoying. Okay, you have to actually push the button. That might help. But you're getting the spin effect, which is really flippin' annoying at times. And I'm getting a whole lot of nothing. I'm getting the infamous spin or the back and forth wheel deal. It's annoying, to say the least. And what's the other thing Walter football does that's super annoying? Yeah, they only show you half the draft, and you got to click the button to get the other half. Isn't that cute? Yep, they have Fernando Mania going on in Vegas. Big surprise there. I'm just stunned. Unless Finnegan's going number 3 overall or something, but I don't think so. Yep, Jared McCoy, cornerback, going to the Jets, 16th. And luckily we're number 18, so I got to wait for that. Who does he have coming to Minnesota? Dylan Thieneman. See, there you go. Even Walter football agrees that Dylan Thieneman's coming to the Minnesota Vikings. So probably he's definitely going to be way up at the top of my list of guys to research and conversate about in the upcoming episode. So that should be a lot of fun to talk about coming up with the draft. Dylan Thieneman, more than likely, coming to the Vikings. At least consensus right now. Stuff changes. There's plenty of time. The draft is about a month away. Can't wait. But as of right now, Dylan Thieneman is looking more and more like the guy coming here. And for understandable reasons, he could be a nice Harrison Smith replacement, and that is all over the place here in these mock drafts. So with that, we're going to take a quick break and return for some fan interaction here on the Purple Mafia Minnesota Vikings Free Agency Special. And we are back here on Purple Mafia segment number 2. We're going to do the fan interaction now, as I think we got the point across for the most part with the free agency and the upcoming draft. Looks like we might be taking a safety, if you didn't figure that out yet. At Purple Mafia Show for the Twitter account. Of course, if you want to send in a call in, it would be at palladinolive@gmail.com. palladinolive@gmail.com. As you will notice in the show description from now on. The same for the Instagram out there, Purple Mafia Show there. And, of course, Facebook is, I don't know, it doesn't work, basically. So you can probably view it, but I can't get to it. So whatever with that one. To the Twitter we go. We're going to hear from Mad Martin, Dave Martin. Mad Martin back in the house again, and really appreciate it. As I'm trying to attempt something here. Yes, I was talking about, who were we talking about? Something about Kyler Murray here. It doesn't say, okay, Thorko, but I can't even see what I'm responding to. Okay, that's kind of frustrating. Okay, well, I was just saying with Thorko all the way that it feels like there's no plan in this organization. With bringing in Kyler Murray is simply not the answer. J.J. McCarthy was building into this season. I was hoping to bring in Geno Smith as a veteran backup, possibly, or just kind of like a short-term starter. Matt Martin says, this feels like the square peg, round hole situation. Not a good fit. I suppose, if nothing, it's going to be very interesting to see how this pans out. So, yes, there is that part. And I'm kind of thinking the same there. About it's going to be interesting to see how I think things pan out when it comes to, why things, just really interesting to see how things pan out with Kyler Murray, just for the the whole storyline, generally speaking. I had to write this because it's kind of like what I'm thinking in the show. If the Vikings move on from J.J. McCarthy, it will go down as a historic mistake. As ugly as things were last year, there is something there, and mark my words, McCarthy will be an outstanding quarterback someday. Dave Martin says, well said, Joey. The route to the franchise is going down. The route to the franchise is going down is a classic overreaction to a poor season. Kind of a lot like certain workplaces out there. They overreact to every little up and down, and it ends up being a mistake both ways. Both frickin' ways. McCarthy needs time to develop, which is something, it must have been a spell check thing that made the phone go crazy or whatever. McCarthy needs time to develop, which is Sonic. The Purple don't look at the last 10 Super Bowl participants. Only 4 were not drafted by their team. Yep, so when it comes to the quarterbacks, only 4 were not drafted by their team when it came to going to the Super Bowl. Yep. Another one, Mad Martin continues saying, those being, Darnold, Brady, Stafford, and he normally, and the only abnormality is Jimmy G, because he was drafted by the Patriots. I hope it's not a colossal mistake, but why would a team pay a quarterback $35 million plus to let him walk? Don't have a great deal of confidence in this team anymore. Yeah, because that would be Kyler Murray. $35 million just to let the guy walk. $35 million to let the guy walk. So pretty wild and crazy when you think about that. I guess that's pretty much the end of the whole conversation when it comes to the whole situation with Kyler Murray. That's kind of the lead conversation in this episode with free agency. So, yes, I can bring this up at the very end of the show. Apparently, Jesse Pierce, who is known to be a Minnesota Wild, has kept up with the Minnesota Wild for many years with a pretty popular podcast known as the Bar Down Beauties. Unfortunately, her and her 3 children and dog tragically died in a house fire early Saturday morning. Very strange. So very strange and very sad to think about what happened there. So just want to pay my respects to her on this show since it had happened pretty darn recently upon the recording of this episode. And I'm sure, during the Brave the Wild episode that I'll be doing on Thursday, I'll be paying respects to her probably at the beginning of that episode. But for Jesse Pierce and her 3 children and the dog, a moment of silence. Jesse Pierce definitely was a well-known and well-respected writer on NHL.com, and of course had a very popular Minnesota Wild podcast or Minnesota hockey podcast called the Bar Down Beauty. So definitely a big shocker here locally. You'll probably be hearing tons and tons of that tomorrow or whenever, because I'm recording this on Sunday night. But during the course of this week, I'm sure you'll be hearing tons and tons about Jesse Pierce if you happen to be local here in the cities. I'm sure you've probably heard about it already, depending on how often people keep up with sports. But for those of you that aren't local and don't really keep up with the Minnesota Wild, it's pretty crazy. So very crazy and unexpected. Not sure what to think about what happened there, other than it's, as Michelle Tafoya says, unimaginably tragic. No words. May this family rest in peace. Yep, well said, Michelle Tafoya. That's like basically like a, those tweets that kind of like pop out, this is like a starred tweet for everybody to see. So, yes, it's crazy, tragic story there. So, sorry to end on that sad note, but had to pay some respects there to a very unexpected tragedy that took place early this weekend. So, this past weekend. So, hopefully the Minnesota Vikings also, again, Hopefully they're heading in the right direction. I'm not really sure at the moment. We'll see how things go. The next episode will be the draft preview leading into the late April draft, as we like to do. Should be fun, should be interesting, and we'll see what the Vikings do. Up until then, eventually we'll hear about a hiring of a new general manager or the current one. Other than that, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to call into the show if you can. If you do a call-in, simply open up your smart device, press the, free voice recording app that every smart device has, or download a free one, because they're not going to cost you anything. Press record, and then just kind of treat it like a phone call or a voice message. Then send it to palladinolive@gmail.com, palladinolive@gmail.com, and I sure as heck better get it and get it on the show. Thank you again in advance. Please do a 5-star rating if you could, a 5-star rating for Purple Mafia Show on, for Purple Mafia on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever app you can do it on, but preferably Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Greatly appreciate it. I want to thank you in advance for that as well. One final thing, obviously I'm able to convert some of these files into MP3 files if need be, or some pictures into JPEGs, thanks to cloudconvert.com. I'm more than happy to give them a free plug because they've provided me a free service, so how can I not return the favor? Cloudconvert.com. All right, so with that said, it's an interesting free agency for sure. Short-term solution, Band-Aid quarterback, long-term quarterback. Who knows what this franchise is really thinking at the end of the day. I just hope it's the right decision one way or another, and they do come to the right decision, and would love to see J.J. McCarthy be the guy long-term. I hope that's still a possibility, but if not, I guess best of luck to him when things go forward. We'll find out soon, won't we? With that said, take care, and we should be back soon to preview the 2026 NFL Draft.